Hello everyone, I'm Norman Wildberger. We are talking about mathematics and music, and I'm proposing a new staff notation system, which I call the Parity Staff Notation System, or PSN for short. And I think this has the possibility of really reorienting us in a major way towards music, towards how we express music, how we compose music, how we play music across a lot of instruments. This is a system which is inherently sort of mathematical, or it's mathematically oriented. It's looking towards the logical underlying structure and trying to move away from cultural or historical sort of precedences that depend on, say, the architecture of various instruments, like the piano notably. Okay, there's lots of advantages to this, and some more will probably become apparent to us as we proceed. But first of all, it treats all of our 12 tones in our chromatic 12-tone scale in a uniform way. They're all on the same footing, essentially. So transposition, etc., is much facilitated. There's no sharps or flats, so the complexity really goes down dramatically, and I'm going to be showing you that today when we talk about scales, okay, in this new system, and how really there's a dramatic simplification, even with just major scales. The treble clef and the bass clefs are treated in the same way, so there's no separate memorization rigmaroles that have to be put into place, okay? They're essentially exactly the same, and so the same notation and language applies to both of them. It's easy to read using black and white notes, so we're exploiting this beautiful, in-your-face distinction between black and white on a page, which is so noticeable. And we're really putting that to good effect here to facilitate an efficient way of representing notes on a page. Things are not that different though, because we're still using a 5-line staff or stave pretty well as usual. And we'll see, not just in this lecture, but also in subsequent lectures, that this really simplifies our understanding of scales and chords, and really has the possibility for letting us rethink what's going on in music. So in mathematics, we are especially sensitive to the importance of notation, and we recognize that if you choose good notation, and good terminology too, of course, then that can really open up a discipline and reveal structure that otherwise was hard to find. So this parity staff notation system that I'm proposing uses a 12-tone system where we have tones 0 to 11 in this larger context of notes, which can be denoted by a tone and also an octave. Okay, so something like 0/0 means that we're in octave 0, say the one starting at middle C typically, and we're talking about tone 1. And then here octave 0, tone 1, etc. So that way we can describe notes rather systematically up and down our musical world. Okay, so here is the basic story. Okay, the basic story is all contained in this one diagram. Okay, so if we understand this one diagram, we understand the whole story. And here are the notes. And we're going to agree, for simplicity for now, that the middle C on a piano will be our reference tone 0, a reference note 0. Later on, we're going to see that this system is a little bit more flexible than that. We don't actually have to do that. So if we're thinking about a guitar, which we will be later on, then we will have cause to change this, but the same structure will still apply in that situation, and even for other instruments as well. But so for now, think about the note C as being tone 0. So here then perhaps is middle C, okay? And you note that this thing here looks a lot like the usual middle C. It's on a separate little line, just a segment there, just one below the bottom line of our staff or stave. And we're going to say that that is our note 0. And that corresponds to the physical note C, say, in the usual system. And what we do then is we march up this thing here, alternating black and white. So black is one tone, and then the white on the same line is the next tone up. So we go from 0 to 1, and then the next tone we go up a level up a level to the next level and have a black note. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And the next one on this line here, this middle line, would be 0 again. So this is a 1 octave, and that's basically the pattern, okay? And the notes that they correspond to in the traditional sense are C, D flat or C sharp, D, E flat or D sharp, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, B. Then after we get to this middle line, that note there is the same as this one here, so that's another 0. So then the whole pattern just replicates, and we're talking about the same notes, just exactly 1 octave above. Okay, so this is 0, this is also 0, so this is also 0, 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then finally this one up here would be like the high C, another 0. And so we can see on this chart that these two notes are both note 3 in our system, or in traditional language, they are both E flats. These are both E's, these are both F's, etc. So yes, I know it's a very big ask, especially for someone who's been trained in classical music for a long time, like myself. It's a big ask to get us to change our orientation. And no doubt, you know, this is something that would be very easy for a younger generation, but us older folks, maybe not so easy. But we can try, right, to have an open mind and to be prepared to learn new things. The advantages are very, very considerable, as you'll see. Okay? So the parity aspect of this situation, encoded in the name, is sort of obvious here because the distinction between the even and the odd tones is reflected in the distinction between the black and the white notes, or note heads. Okay? 0, 2, 4, 6, they're all in black. 1, 3, 5, 7, etc., they're all in white. So one of the things that we would like to do is to get our heads around this and become a little bit familiar with where the various notes are and, you know, the relationships between them. But I guarantee you that this is dramatically simpler than the usual story that we're familiar with. So let me say a little bit about treble and bass clefs and how they're represented in this story. So there are going to be two staves. So this set of 5 lines is called a stave. And here's another stave. And in usual piano music, which I've shown you, this would be a treble clef and this would be the bass clef, and there would be various clef signs here to denote sort of where we are. And if you look at a regular piece of piano music, the space between these two clefs is considerably larger than the one that I'm showing you here. And there's a good reason for that. We need to talk about that very briefly. So what I'm showing you here is a kind of a theoretical ideal, okay, where we've arranged these staves in such a position that the relative separation between them is exactly 2 line widths. So there's exactly a room in here for a dotted line. Okay, and if we put a dotted line in there, then there would be sort of a uniform spacing between all of these lines. We do that because that way we get a smooth transition from the top clef to the bottom clef. We can go freely up and down without interruption, essentially. Although, of course, as we cross here, we do require having to sort of put an extra line in here to denote a note which is actually on this dotted line. But other than that, there's a uniformity. Okay, so this picture here really encodes the natural translational uniformity that we have in our musical world. Now, the reason why we do not usually see this kind of thing in a piano score is because in many cases, the left hand playing in the bass clef will want to play some notes which are actually belonging to the treble clef, but the composer wants to write those notes in the lower half so that it's clear that the left hand is playing them. Okay? It gets a little bit confusing when both hands are playing in the same clef, because then it's not clear which hand should be playing which notes. So that's really the reason why there's this space to allow sort of a ladder of possible extra levels either going up or going down, so that either hand can sort of temporarily move into the space of the other clef. Okay, so I'm not saying that we should avoid that, and I think for piano music it's perfectly reasonable. So I'm not demanding that we do this, but I'm just pointing out that this is sort of the theoretical ideal, and that's what I'm going to be showing you in pictures. But in practice, if you were actually giving some music to somebody, and it might still be useful to have these separated more widely with this understanding that there's really only one line in between them. Okay, so here are some notes. So let's navigate a little bit around here, see if we can sort of suss out where these notes are, even though we're not that experienced about it. And I want to especially introduce this idea of levels, which is very useful. So let me start with that. So we want to get the idea that, the various possible heights where a note can appear are the levels, okay? So, that's a level. And then the space between them is also a level. Okay, then that's a level, et cetera, right? So notes can appear either on lines or on spaces, and each one of those possible positions corresponds to a level. And it makes perhaps sense if we start with the dotted line as level 0. So that would be level 0, then this one here would be level 1, so that's at level 1, then level 2, level 3, level 4, etc. Up to level 10, and then level 11, and then this one here would be level 12, I suppose, which is again sort of back to level 0 for the next one. And similarly here. Okay, so that allows us to describe a little bit more clearly where a note is on the staff. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these notes, maybe not all of them, but first of all, a good orientation perhaps to start with is to recall that the lines themselves correspond to the even notes. So starting with this one here, say 0, okay? And then, so this is note 0, that's note 1, okay? This one here, if that was black, it would be 2. As it is, it's 3, okay? And then the next one, which would be the black one on this line, would be 4. So this next line, which is like level 2, corresponds to note 4. And we've seen that it goes up by 4 with each line. So we go 0, 4, 8, and then back to 0. Corresponding to that augmented uniform scale, uniform 4 scale. Okay, and then it keeps on going 4, 8 similarly, and then the next one, where that one there is again 0. So that's a really good reference point, okay? So it sort of gives you a pretty close idea of where you are. So for example, this one here, it's on this line. If it was black, it would be note 8, okay? But currently it's note 9 because it's a white note. This one here is on this line, 0, so it's note 0 because it's black. This one here is between the 4 and the 8, so if it was on here, it would be either note 4 or note 5. This space here corresponds to also an even value. That would be 6. So we can sort of put secondary ones like maybe 2 here, 6 here, 10 here, all right? Sort of secondary things indicating the spaces. But these numbers here that I'm drawing correspond to the black notes. If there's a black note in that position, then it has that value. If it's a white note, it's going to be one more. So this one here, we were looking at that. So that would be like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, like this. So this is in that space, which has a 6 right next to it. So if it was black, it would be 6. What it currently is 7. Now, we could also do that sort of step by step. This is 0, so if we sort of count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so, and then this one here, that's 7, then 8, 9 on the line, and then 10. So that would be 10. This one here is 0. Okay, I also want to show you the story in this sort of bass clef, seemingly different, but it's exactly the same. So we could also indicate the line 0, 4, 8, 0, 4, 8, and then back up to 0. So it's exactly the same, really, okay? So this thing here, okay, if we look at the 5 lines, it's in the same position as this one is. So it's in the 7th position. That's note number 7. This one here, well, it's in the same position as that one is. It's line 0. What about this one? Well, if we go up from here, 7 and then 8 on the line in black, 9 on the line in white, and then this would be 10, actually the same as that one. So actually here you see sort of what octaves, you see some sort of octaves or actually double octaves. So this thing here and this one here are separated by 2 octaves, okay? And they're exactly in the same position. So that's the general rule, that a note here and the corresponding note up there are separated by exactly 2 octaves. Very different from what happens with our usual bass and treble clefs. That's a huge simplification, okay? It makes everything a lot easier, really. What about this thing way down here? Well, that's in the same position as this. So you don't have to do a separate thinking. It's just, this is in position 3, so that's note number 3. Let me remind you that if you're a student of music and you started when you were a kid, like I did, I started maybe when I was 6 or 7 years old. We had piano lessons once a week, and we went in there, and you learn, okay, this note here is G, and you learn to play G, and then you learn to play in quarter notes, G, 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 and then maybe you learn a G and an F. So you learn G, F, G, G. So you do a lot of exercises just repeating over and over again simple notes. And then a few weeks later, you add a new note. Okay? It's a long process, actually. It takes a long time for young people to learn all the notes on both clefs. So if you're thinking, well, this is a little bit of a work for me to learn this new system. Yes, it is. But it's a fraction of the work that's involved in learning the traditional system. I hope you can appreciate that. Yes, there's some work to be done, but it's a big improvement educational-wise. All right, let's talk a little bit about scales, and we're going to start with arguably the simplest scales, which are the 2 uniform scales. And there are essentially 2 of them. Of course, there's actually more depending on where you start, but there's sort of 2 scale patterns that go in both directions. And here they are in our PSN notation. Here are the notes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. They're all in black, happily. The separation is all just a single 2-step for in each case. And what we're doing is we're just going through all the levels, one level at a time. So that's level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. So the actual value of the note is in fact just twice the level, except that the note value only goes up to 11 and then it goes back to 0. Okay, and in terms of the usual piano notes, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, or B flat, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then the next one back to C. The other 2 uniform scale consists of all the white notes, again going up just one level at a time, starting with this one, which is note 1. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, then again 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, back to 1. And in terms of piano notes, D flat, E flat, F, G, A, B, D flat, and then E flat again, F, G, A, B, D flat. So these are especially useful because they're going up sort of systematically, and they're all either black or all either white. And they're all going up by 2 steps, so that's quite easy and pleasant. And so the uniformity of things, the translation invariance is very clearly in evidence here. So now we come to the core structure of modern music, which is the major scale. And of course there are 12 major scales, but when we represent them on the usual staff, there's actually quite a few variants of each, because in just the treble clef, the sort of first half scale and the second half scale look different. And in the bass clef, again, they look different. And moreover, the bass clef story for a scale looks different from the treble clef story of the scale. So if I had to sort of exhibit all 12 scales in their full glory, that would take up a lot of time and be a lot of effort. So keep that in mind as we now describe what the major scale story looks like in this new parity system. So here is the familiar scale, the major scale, starting on C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then it repeats C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and up to C. So let's have a look here, okay? The crucial thing about a major scale, right, is the interval sequence that's involved. The interval sequence is 2-2-1, 2-2-2-1. So here is a 2. You can tell that because they're both black notes and we're going up one level, right? That's exactly what was happening in that 2 uniform scale that I just showed you. So that's step 2. That's also step 2. Now after the 2-2, there's a step 1. So the step 1 in this case manifests itself by just this black note turning into a white note, but not increasing the level. Okay, so that's a 1 step there. And then we have 3 consecutive 2 steps. And we know what 2 steps look like. We start with a white note, we just go up to the next white note on the next level. That's a 2 step. That's another 2 step. That's another 2 step. That's that second 2 uniform scale. Okay, and so now we're up to here, so we've just done our 3 consecutive 2s. Now we have to do another 1 step. But now we're starting on a white note. And a 1 step from a white note is the black note, which is the next level up. So it looks like that. Okay, so that's the entire scale from C to C. 0, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 0. And note that we're going up each level exactly once, okay? Each level exactly once, with the sole exception right here. Here's the only place where the level is being repeated. And that's exactly at the transition between the 3 increasing black notes and the 4 increasing white notes. And of course, that's the same thing up here, and it's the same in both clefs. Great. So that's the C major scale. Let's have a look at the closely connected G major scale. Okay, so that starts on note 7. There's note 7. Okay, and we write down the interval sequence. So 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. Okay, so what are the corresponding notes? Well, interval sequence of 2, that's going from this white note to the next white note on the next level. So that's 2, and that's 2. And then we have a 1 step. And just as over here, I told you that the 1 step from a white note is the black note on the next level. So there's the 1 step. And then we have 3 consecutive 2 steps. And we know that if we're starting with a black note, a 2 step gives us another black note of the next level up. So there's a 2 step, a 2 step, a 2 step, and then finally a final 1 step. And that's going from a black note to a white note. It's the same story here. So we stay on the same level. I want you to appreciate the similarities, but the slight differences between these 2 situations. So it'll turn out that these are basically the only 2 situations, right? This is the entire story of major scales, essentially. And in each case, we have 3 of one color, followed by 4 of the other. In this type, when we start with a black note, we have 3 black notes, followed by 4 white notes, where the only place where the level is not increasing is at the junction between when we change from black to white. At that stage, we don't go up in a level. Otherwise, we're always going up by a level. And in this case here, when we start on a white note, we have 3 white notes, followed by 4 black notes. And then it repeats. And the only place where we don't go up a level is again in the same situation where we're going from a black note to a white note. Going from a white note to a black note, yes, we do go up. So that's actually quite an attractive pattern. I think it's very attractive. And it means that understanding scales from this point of view, understanding major scales, is quite an attractive proposition. All right, so to illustrate that, here are some more scales. I'm sort of going roughly around the circle of fifths, sort of starting with C. So on the other side, the F scale, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, notes 5, 7, 9, then 10, 0, 2, 4, 5. Here they are right here. 3 white notes going up, followed by 4 black notes all going up by one level each time. And then only when we go from the black to the white to start the next scale or to finish it, we stay on the same level. The D scale, starting down here, note 2, 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, 1, 2, 3 black notes. Then staying on the same level to the white note, then 4 consecutive white notes, and then going up to the final 2. And note in each case, from here to here, that is an octave because we're going up a total of 3 lines. 1, 2, 3 lines, right? That's an octave. And here spaces 1, 2, 3 going up 3 spaces. Like that's like 0, 4, 8, 0, right? Okay, and here's B flat. There's 10, that's B flat. 10, 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. 3 black ones, followed by 4 white ones. Same pattern as that. A scale. There's number 9, 9, 11, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Same as this. 3 white notes, 4 black notes. And you just remember the only time when you're not going up to the next level is when you're going from a black note to a white note. That's the only place where you stay on the same level. So these are the only 2 patterns. And I could easily write down the other ones, and it's all pretty well the same story. These, of course, are really good things for students to study if you're trying to learn this system. So we're going up and down these scales, playing them on whatever instrument you've got to get used to, which notes actually correspond to which symbols on the page. That's an important skill. But, after a few hours of this, you're probably going to get the hang of it, especially if you have some facility with the scales. And learning a few of these scales probably makes things easier. And finally, I want to show you a pattern where we cross from one stave to another, so you can see that it's really the same pattern as well. And the uniformity in the way we set up the staves makes that pretty logical and simple. So here are our 2 staves, bass clef and treble clef, if you like. Here is middle C, or 0, just a single dotted line, equally spaced with the other ones. So let's look at the E scale, whose notes are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. In terms of tones, 4, 6, 8, then up 1 to 9, 11, 1, 3, and then up 1 to 4. So there's 4. Okay, remember 0, 4, 8, 0, 4, 8, 0, 4, 8, 0. So that's 4. That's 6. That's 8. Then up 1 to 9, up 2 to 11, up 2 to 1. Okay, from here to here, that's a 2-step. And now we take another 2-step. From here to here is another 2-step. And then a 1-step, we go from this white note up to the next black note. So in terms of what it actually looks like, it's exactly the same. It's just that we're crossing the divide. But if you think of this dotted line as just, it's just dotted really for, to make things easier to read. It's really just a line just like any other line, really. Okay, so great. I hope you're excited by this. I hope you're thinking, well, there's all kinds of possibilities here. And what do things look like when we talk about chords, which are, it's a bigger subject than scales. So chords is pretty interesting. So I'm going to tell you about that next time. You'll see that, again, this system has much to recommend it. I'm Norman Wildberger. Thanks for listening.